Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our facilitators. Fellow Hasso Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford University, D.school, David Janka, and Managing Director, Hasso Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford University, D.school, Sarah Stein Greenberg.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So if you couldn't put two and two together, I'm David, and this is Sarah. We are both employees. We work at the Hasso Plattner Institute of Design, or the D.school. There we teach, we create, and we inspire people, and that's why we're here today to work with you. We're really excited to bring you through that process. We also both have extensive experience in developing countries, and as we were talking and preparing, we realized that we both have experiences with strong women entrepreneurs in these countries, leaders that we've worked with that we are excited to help leverage their skills. The first thing we're going to do is watch a short video together to help set the context, and we'll move forward from there. Thank you very much.
Andy is a small business owner in Samoa, a small island in the Pacific Ocean. Across the world, she and other owners of small and medium-sized businesses are responsible for 85% of employment in the formal and informal sectors. Small and medium-sized businesses also offer the most promise for future job creation as they grow the fastest. Right now, women-owned businesses are growing at a greater rate than those owned by men. This is a huge opportunity for economic growth worldwide. However, women entrepreneurs face many challenges. They face limited access to skills development and networking. They lack access to sufficient financing to grow their businesses, and they face limited access to global markets to sell their goods. Andy has managed to overcome these obstacles. Local farmers in Samoa grow organic coconuts, which her workers turn into coconut oil that is now sold to the Body Shop for use in their products worldwide. Andy has managed to access the global supply chain, train her workers, and finance the growth of her business. The world needs more success stories like hers. How can we provide the right tools for growing women-owned businesses in the developing world?
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the process that we're going to use today. You heard this morning from a number of speakers about the relevance of design and using design in the context of development. And this afternoon, we actually have an opportunity to dig into that and to explore a little bit of how that might work. So we're going to take you through a very fast-paced session. I promise it will feel like we are moving you too fast through the topics, and that is true. But what design actually helps us do is to take very quick action and try small steps that lets us experiment more quickly. And, CGI is all about turning ideas into impact and into action. Today, we're going to explore how to get those ideas on the table in the first place. So we're going to go through a period of idea generation together. That's going to be the central activity for us this afternoon. Before we do that, we're going to hear from three really amazing speakers. These speakers are going to provoke and inspire us, and then we're going to be able to debrief a little bit about what we hear them say, move into the brainstorming. From the brainstorming, the team that is at your table, you guys are going to pick one of your ideas and develop it further. And then we'll have a little opportunity to share with each other what those ideas are turning out to be. So before we dive into the speakers, we want to actually ask you to be listening for a couple of very specific things. So obviously, this is a very large topic. How can we empower women-owned businesses, create the conditions for women-owned businesses to really flourish in the developing world? This is a big, messy topic. So we want you to be really listening carefully for the following things. How can we help women access markets and the global supply chain? How can we provide better access for financing? And think beyond microfinance. Think about finance that actually can help you scale a large company. And how can we do a better job of providing access around skills and women developing networks, women business owners? So at your table, there's a lot of materials that you may not be used to seeing at a CGI workshop. So in the middle, you're going to see these Post-it pads and a lot of pens and Sharpies. As you're listening to these provocative speakers, take some notes, think about the insights that you're hearing, because we're going to have an opportunity to share amongst our tables the things that are really compelling and capturing your attention. So I'd like to introduce our three speakers. We have Luis Moreno from the Inter-American Development Bank. We have Gail Lamon, an author and journalist with the Council on Foreign Relations. And then we have a really special treat. In this design lab, we have the opportunity to hear from a women entrepreneur, a business owner and leader from Jamaica, Ethne Miller-Simpson. And she is going to give us some real insight that we can use to propel our designing. So without further ado, please come join the stage.
I'm supposed to be the kickoff batter here, so let me first of all thank everybody, and it's really a pleasure to be with both Gil and Ethne. And what I'd like to do is paint a bit of the paradox and the challenges. And when you think about these systemic issues, you always think that there's a lot of things that are missing. So I'll try to concentrate understanding that there's probably a lot more detail to many of these. But I think that's the interesting part of your work. And as I do this, I'd just like to give you a couple of examples, things of which we have worked at the IDB that we have learned, and others from other institutions. And, one of the points here was the whole question of access to finance. Well, the first thing that we know is, in general, for small and medium enterprises, there are tremendous gaps in financing. And there's a lot of talk about what's called the missing middle. It is that space under which enterprises begin to be very small and move to be middle-sized, and there they have a lot of gaps in financing. When you look at this case for women, you find two very interesting things. We all know women are loyal, and they are very loyal to financial institutions. They stay with them for a long time. They don't jump from one to the other. And another extremely important thing is that they're very good in paying their debts. They're very good in terms of repayment, much better than men. In fact, the interesting thing here is that there is a gap of about 70% where they don't get access to finance. So there's huge underdeserved credit needs. And here let me give you just a quick example of something that we developed at the IDB, which is to create a way by which you go to financial institutions, and we create a line of $50 million, but understanding that being that wasn't enough, we created also a grant to help train those people in those financial institutions to understand women entrepreneurs. The second issue is the whole question of education and training. And here is a fascinating case. I will speak in general terms, and this is different from emerging regions to other emerging regions, but the tendency is what matters. And what you see today is that you have women in general finding ways to get more education. In fact, in Latin America, the fascinating thing is that today women have as much as 1.5 to 2 years more education than men. And this is an incredible trajectory, and something that will tremendously alter as we know the world today. And here, the lack of access to vocational and business training is fundamental. Goldman Sachs put out a very interesting program that they call 10,000 Women. And fundamentally, that program, what it looks to do is to train women to be better entrepreneurs. That training component is critical for success. A third area that I like to mention is the whole question to access to markets and to the so-called global supply chains. It is truly impressive that the number of women entrepreneurs, there are about 10 million small businesses in the world that are owned by women. That number, by the way, in Latin America is about 1.4 million. However, there's a tremendous disconnect in their access to both networks, to coaching that I was mentioning earlier, and certainly to markets. And here I'll just give you a couple of examples. They don't necessarily apply to women. For instance, in Haiti, we've been working with Donna Karan, and she's been working directly with artisans and teaching those artisans of how to create value in their handicrafts. And this is extremely key because that's the only way that you can begin to have a true impact of shortening that space from the producer to the final consumer. The other thing, for instance, that we did is work with 15,000 producers of mango, created a juice that is distributed by Coca-Cola, and basically you go from the grove directly to the marketplace. Again, these are disruptive business models that are very important. Now, all this happens with tremendous burdens to women, what is typically called the triple burden. That is, women are not only working, but then they have to go home and take care of the kids, the whole child care issues, the proper issues of the household, and then minding their business that they're developing. And here there's a lot of things that have been developed. For instance, one of the most innovative social policies in all of Latin America was the so-called envisioning of what's called the conditional cash transfers. And what basically that said was to women, send your child to school, you will get a stipend of $50 to $100 a month, and we will make sure that you and the child go through examinations to make sure that their health is okay, but also to review the fact that those children are going to school. That liberates time for the mother, but that creates a tremendous change in the family. And so here today, in the case of Latin America, almost 50% of poor families have access to these programs, and that's begun to really change the equation of poverty in all of Latin America. In fact, today, we have about a third of our population that is in poverty. If you look at that, 20 years ago, it was 50%, and if you keep a trend growth that we have today, in 15 years, it will be 10%. In a generation, you will move to have people in the middle classes like never before. Now, all of these benefits, of course, have a tremendous impact on job creation, on increased income, and on poverty reduction. And that, of course, is fundamental for really creating a much richer human capital, which is the fundamental engine for economic growth. So before I turn it over to Gail, these are kind of the big picture items. They have a large component of economic issues, but at the end, there's a human face. And that we must never forget that whatever we do in all of these models, that human element must be at the center. And here are questions of respect, questions of resiliency, questions of how women are more empowered, and certainly it is a key issue for survival, especially in many countries. And I think I meet with my 7 minutes. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure to be here with all of you. I think, you can't count what you don't see. And I think oftentimes when it comes to women, we're trapped in the myth of the micro. And that has an economic cost because suffocating growth in a global economy that is starved for it is not in anybody's best interest. And poverty of income is not the same as poverty of imagination. And, when I started writing about entrepreneurship, I would tell people I'm writing about entrepreneurs, and it happens to be women. And people would say, I love microfinance. And I'd say, wait a minute. I never actually said the word micro. I was actually talking about small and medium enterprises. And that's actually what keeps me focused on these issues, is because these entrepreneurs are there on the ground. And the fact that they are invisible is a real problem because you don't invest in things that are invisible. And so when we talk about these women and whether or not they exist, the numbers are there. Women-owned SMEs account for 40 to 50% of small and medium enterprises in the developing world. And at the same time, they account for less than 1% of corporate procurement spending globally. Three things happen, and they present challenges. I think what's exciting is to use this room. And they present challenges that are really interesting. The first challenge is women entrepreneurs like the ones I met in Bosnia, they're not counted, and they're not heeded. And then you have entrepreneurs like Janet in Rwanda, because skills training is happening. Louise mentioned 10,000 women, and you do see it. Oftentimes, though, it's not connected enough to markets on the ground. And that's slowly changing. You see Janet and you think, well, maybe she's a woman who's about to go sell her basket at a local market. And I'd say, yes, but that local market is Macy's department store here in New York. And then the third thing happens, which is Priscilla, who's an entrepreneur in Ghana. And she gets micro limits and micro ceilings. That's what she hits, because she doesn't need a $10,000 loan. She needs $50,000 to $60,000 to $80,000 to help buy equipment, to get factory space, to really create the growth and the employment that creates the multiplier effect that's in everybody's best interest in economic terms. Now, I think solutions are coming and growing, and everyone in this room has the imagination and innovation to make a difference, because really boosting women entrepreneurs is not the same magnitude of challenge as curing polio or getting AIDS medicine to everybody who needs it. The financial innovation exists and the talent is there. It's become in vogue to call women the emerging market of the emerging markets. And I love that as somebody who worked in financial services, because $500 billion in the last decade went into emerging markets in terms of investment. And you see the real multiplier that has on the ground. And just think about what would happen if women received the same level of attention and financial innovation dedication. Right? I mean, think of that in terms of the economic and anti-poverty and education growth multiplier. We talk a lot about leveling the playing field. And as Milan noted, for some of you who were there this morning, the Food and Agriculture Organization estimated that equalizing access to productive resources between men and women farmers would boost agricultural output by 2.5% to 4%. And unlocking the barriers that keep women out of certain sectors actually does about the same thing for between men and women workers, and it's estimated that could reduce the productivity gap between men and women by 1/3 to 1/2. So if you think about what kind of growth dividends would be possible if we address the 3 A's, access to markets, access to finance, and access to skills, you really see how much good is possible. CGI is really part of generating the next round of solutions for entrepreneurs like the one we met in the video, and Ethne, who I will have the pleasure of introducing you to in a moment. And the group of CGI members right now is leading a campaign to boost market access and visibility for women entrepreneurs. Among the leaders and champions is Marriott, which will source from women entrepreneurs for linens in its hotels and gift items in its gift shops and some of the cleaning services that clean the rooms that you leave behind in the morning. That is just the start, because each contract returns huge dividends in terms of dollars accumulated and jobs created. So I just want to leave you with one thought, which is that money is power for women, and investing in women entrepreneurs boosts progress for families and productivity for economies. The creativity and ingenuity in this room can make a difference for entrepreneurs who already, each day, are thinking well beyond the micro. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Now I have to do the fun part, which is to introduce to you Ethne, who has come to us from Kingston, Jamaica. She brought me coffee. I'm sorry. I know you'll all be very jealous. You are out there every day trying to grow your business, and you've had a real fascinating career trajectory from high school teacher to HR professional and now to entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit about what your business does in trying to brand not only small businesses but also people.
Thank you, Gail. Interestingly enough, yes, I started out as a high school teacher. I think that was one of the best decisions I ever made going into education. I've never had a regret where it concerns education. And then I moved from teaching high school to lecturing, which I still do sometimes. But I went into corporate, so I worked with d.school, which is a telecoms company in Jamaica, and then went into banking. And from there, I said, interestingly, I think I just simply want to do this on my own. I stumbled upon an idea of putting together HR and marketing. That was about 3-4 years ago. And I took that idea and said, okay, how exactly do I take all of the techniques that you use to market products to actually marketing a person and branding a person? Since then, the whole industry has exploded because everybody knows it as personal branding now. And what we find in the Caribbean is that not enough attention is being paid to people brands as much as product brands. And there's that opportunity there which I wanted to explore.
You and I talked about some of the challenges you face. And we talked specifically about access to finance and access to talent. Can you talk a little bit about some of those challenges and obstacles?
Challenges. As a
In
small...
positive way, challenge rather than obstacle.
As a small business person, there are many challenges, largely of which is access to financing. We also have issues pertaining to finding talent, because one of the things that I have done is, instead of trying to go for top talent who will have the skills and the competence that you want off the bat, is actually to take someone with passion and interest and then groom them up. I find that works for me financially as a business owner, and it dovetails with my interest in building and developing people. So I get a twofer, or I get to do two things, just building people that way.
And how do you navigate around some of the obstacles? Because a lot of entrepreneurs will talk about the three obstacles that Luis mentioned, and also the challenges that you face just doing business in what can be a difficult environment, particularly for women.
Well, access to financing, I got around that a little bit by going to friends and family, first and foremost, which is otherwise called angel investing.
Sounds very familiar to probably a lot of entrepreneurs in this room.
Exactly. So that was the first thing. Another challenge that we faced, and I was just sharing with President Luis, that I was a beneficiary of one of his programs, which he didn't know about. In that, I got a chance to actually deal with learning about how to run a business, and that was really, really important. And so much so that some of my clients, I've actually started coaching them, because you find that you meet people in the street who have an idea and they're not sure how to get their idea from out of their heads onto a piece of paper, and then from the paper to try to find funding to back their idea. So what I've tried to do is to build out a network and use my network to help them. And through my network, which I was lucky enough to be a part of Vital Voices last year and the Fortune 500 program, is taking that information back and then using that to help others. You mentioned something about difficulty with agriculture. Coming out of that program last year, I went home and I said to my father, you have 5 acres of land and it's about time to move it into the 21st century. And many persons were shocked that a woman is actually going to go into farming. Some doors that were closed before, I've been hitting and hitting and hitting, trying to get the door to open, because there's a lot of opportunity there. We have a lot of land that needs to be mobilized, lots of women who actually have access to land, but is getting all the pieces on the board connected. That remains a challenge, and that's, well, an opportunity actually, as opposed to being a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And as we talk about networks, we're part of an incredible one here. What can CGI and the networks with which it's affiliated do to help entrepreneurs like you out on the ground fighting for growth every day?
The first thing that comes to mind is access to information. That's number one. Because I find that once people know that the opportunities exist, women tend to be very resilient, and we kind of push for what we want sometimes, So giving them that information, number one, is key. Access to markets, because many of us, for example, in my business, I source from everywhere. So here in the U.S., I source from places in Jersey, I source from California as well as overseas, and it is trying to get that product connected with people who want it. Mm-hmm. So that is another issue there. Skills development, business planning was one of the key things for me that I learned from, and I have the opportunity of sharing that. So that would also be another area that we could look into.
But this is terrific as we all turn to our tables, matchmaking, mentoring, and thinking about how to get skills and information and technical financial innovation to folks who are going to use it to create jobs and fight poverty every day. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you to our wonderful and inspiring speakers. If you were like me, you heard a lot of very specific and concrete needs in there and a lot of very inspiring directions that you could pursue. So the next step is that what we'd like you to do is turn to the people at your table. This is now the design team that you are on for the rest of this session. And we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance just to share quickly who you are, and then what you heard of what the speakers just said that most captured your imagination, that most inspired you, and that will help us get going on our brainstorming in a few minutes. So we're going to give you about 6 or 7 minutes to have that quick debrief at the tables and to introduce yourselves.
All right, everyone. Don't worry, you're going to be spending a lot of time together, so you'll get to continue to talk, but we need to move things forward. Like Sarah said, things are going to be moving rapidly. That's how we do things. So, all right, so now we framed the problem a little bit, gotten a little context, and now it's time to start generating ideas. So one thing that we teach at the D.school is to be mindful of process, to really understand what you're doing and why you're doing and what the outcome is, and to kind of forget everything else. So right now we're brainstorming to create the maximum innovation potential. We want lots of ideas. We're doing this in a short amount of time, so we're trying to get a high volume with only a few minutes for each brainstorming session. We're going to be incorporating different perspectives, and that's why we're so honored to have all of you in the room and all of you at these tables. I'm sure that as you've been talking to people, you realize you're dealing with many different people from many different backgrounds, and brainstorming helps facilitate the sharing of those ideas, and it helps for those ideas to be transferred and really to build some excitement around interesting ones. But in order to do this correctly, we have some rules. So the first one we've kind of mentioned is to go for quantity. So we want a large volume. We want the maximum potential to get something new and interesting. So how do we do that? Well, one way is to encourage wild ideas. So this is both a time to expose the things that you have already done before, that you feel comfortable with, but this is a time to take risks. You're in a safe place. You don't know these people too well, so get out those crazy ideas, jot them on a Post-it note. Another way that we generate a large quantity of ideas is to defer judgment. So this is not the time to edit your own ideas, and it's not the time to edit others' ideas. You accept them, you put them down on a Post-it, and you move on to the next one. So a further way to generate ideas is to build off of others. If you hear someone expressing an idea and it triggers something in your head, follow up their idea with one of your own. So we do have a lot of people in the room, and it's not going to be completely quiet, but try in your table to have one conversation at a time. When someone headlines something on a Post-it, they announce it, and then you move on to the next person. Stay focused on the topic, so we're going to help you focus your brainstorming and give you some prompts to help with each section. And finally, be visual if possible. Sometimes an idea is best expressed with a picture or a symbol or something very simple like that.
All right, so just to recap, we're going for quantity, and we're really leveraging the diverse backgrounds that we have. Those are the key things to listen to each other, build on ideas, and go for quantity. I want to do one quick thing, which is there are some people in the room who are here to really help us this afternoon. These are our table facilitators. Can you raise your hand if you're a table facilitator? So if you get stuck at all, there are going to be people floating around the room, and you can pull any one of us into the conversation. All right, so we're going to get designing, and what I want you to check out is on your table, you have this kind of placemat, okay? This is the capture device for all of your amazing ideas. It's kind of divided into thirds. This group actually sort of wrote over those lines. That's great. You can see that this team really didn't write too many words on a Post-it, and that helps later on when you're finding that one great idea that happened at the beginning of the session. So don't overthink it. Don't worry about writing down every detail. This is another example of one of the teams from the last session. Great volume. We really want to see these boards totally plastered with ideas. So push yourselves to keep getting to that next idea instead of getting stuck having a conversation. All right, so without further ado, we're going to start the first brainstorm session. We'd like you to brainstorm around this prompt. How might we improve access to markets and global supply chains for women business owners? And feel free to design any kind of solution. It could be a product, a service, a new business model, a whole system, but that is the prompt that we'd like you to get started with. All right, let's get designing.
All right, everyone, how did that feel? You guys still going? It seems like it felt good because we saw a lot of ideas, a lot of volume. We should have given you bigger poster boards. It might be hard, but I'm going to ask you to switch gears now. So temporarily leave the space of this brainstorm behind. And this is prompt number 2. So redirect yourselves. How might we improve access to finance for scaling? Now that sounds like a big, broad topic. A couple other ways to potentially break this down is, remember, we're not looking at microfinance. We're looking at things beyond microfinance. when you think about finance, you think about establishing a reputation or credit worthiness. So how do we find alternative ways to establish credit worthiness, perhaps women-centric ways, however you might define that? How can we improve strategy skills through education? And how can we look at the financial institutions who are going to be granting these larger loans and help them reframe what it means to give money to women business owners? So pick the topics that you think will resonate with your group, and you've got 7 minutes. All right, everyone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do something that might be very difficult. But again, let's be mindful of process. So we just generated a lot of ideas, and that felt, it felt great. There was tons of energy in here. But now we're going to select, and we're going to move one idea forward. So think back, look at your ideas, look for the idea that perhaps generated the most excitement in your group or that you feel like you have a lot of energy behind. We would like everyone to move forward as a table together, but if you feel like there's maybe 2 ideas that your table's really excited about, we can bring you an extra worksheet that Sarah's about to tell you, and you can move forward 2 ideas.
All right. So here's what we'd like. Often at the end of a brainstorm, what really needs to happen is you need to flesh out the idea a little bit further for it to make sense and for it to really start to approach something that's worth testing or be able to test. So at your table, we have these worksheets. And what we'd like you to do after you do that hard job of picking one of your many amazing ideas is to actually fill this out. So across the top, you'll see concept title. This one was from the last session. It says affordable, clean microgrids owned by women entrepreneurs. That could maybe work in this session too. And then a short space for a concept description, just a couple of sentences to flesh that out. What does that mean? And then you see this blue band across the middle. That's for the concept journey. And what we really want you to do is to think about how would the person using your service or product or solution, how would they access it? How would they learn about it in the first place? What would that experience be like? Would they need financing along the way? What would happen after? Would it need maintenance? Would it need repair? So this concept journey allows you to really draw at a systems level what the whole journey might feel like to the user you're designing for. And then finally, we really want you to bring this to life. So whatever you need to do a quick sketch, could be a systems diagram, could be a business plan, could be a portrait of your user. We really want you to bring that to life in a visual way. And I will tell you, there were several teams from the last session. I see some people laughing over here, but I kid you not, there were people who did pull out the construction paper and the scissors, and those were some of the best and most fruitful diagrams or illustrations that we saw. So a little challenge on the table for you to think about.
And there was one team who actually used some of the materials on their table, so there were Coca-Cola bottle physical prototypes. So we need to up the bar for the next design lab, so feel free to use anything in the room.
That's right. So we're going to give you have 2 minutes to select and then go right into fleshing out the concept journey and the concept map. If you haven't picked your idea yet, go ahead and make a selection and start illustrating.
All right, everyone, you have about 3 minutes left, so finish up. I'm seeing some awesome things. Some teams are even using the gold stars. If you haven't used those yet, get them out.
All right, your final minute. We've got 1 minute left.
All right, everyone. So I don't know about you, but I'm really excited for the next part because we're going to get to hear what some of these tables have come up with. I know there's some of you who are really eager. Oh, gosh, look at it. That's awesome over there.
Okay, a team is taking a photo of itself already before the session is even done.
It's a good sign.
That's a very good sign.
So I'm going to kind of help scope who we hear from. So the first thing is, if you remember, the very first prompt was, how might we help women gain access to global supply chains? Does anyone have an idea that focused on that specific prompt, looking at the global supply chains, looking at the middlemen to get their products and services out there?
And if you can raise your hand if you want to share, then a table facilitator will bring a microphone around and we'll just ask you to headline your idea in just a few seconds, maybe 45 seconds. So who would like to share an idea relating to the first brainstorm topic? You want to start here? Okay, can we get a mic?
He's ready,
Here's your mic. Come here.
Oh boy. The concept that we came up with at our table, we were very excited about, actually, is the Busy Bee platform. That's the name that we're giving it. And the focus is for the women in business who, yes, thank you so much. Women in business who want to access financing as well as skills training as well as market access. The intention is almost like coming up with a crowdsourcing kind of framework where anybody who wants to fund small business women would go to this platform and provide the funding. And women who want to access the funding would also go to the same platform. It is actually pulling everything into one location. So we have our 3 areas, our concept journey. There's internal finance. You also have commercial aspect to it. You have market linkage institutions. You have government and NGOs who would actually help to spread the word. So any woman who is down here, which is our little B at the bottom here, who wants to access all 3 areas would go through that platform, and it helps to pull everything into one location. Have I represented
Wonderful.
everything? And it's all web-based because we're focusing on it being a cloud-type approach, so everything is actually web-based.
Fantastic. Round of applause. Okay, another idea in the same vein. More on access to supply chain or access to markets.
So this is this idea is called Venture Scouts Troop. It basically takes a local community leaders in wherever they are, in whatever city it could be, and they form a little troop that goes around scouting for good ideas in the women community. And it's a group of individuals, young scouts, that are scouting talent, moving in between formal and informal businesses. So they create the team, they design the methodology for assessment. They train the team members. They divide them into groups, the ones who go to small businesses, the ones who go to medium businesses. You create a single CD that would have a jingle, so they sing as they go through about investing, and there would be a website that would be the job market that would connect the good ideas with potential funders or sellers to source it. And then we would design a little business in a box that would be handed over to the community or to the entrepreneur to give him then the possibility to create the financials to have access to funding. And that's basically it.
All right, so now we're going to move on to the next prompt. If you remember that centered around access to financing to scale and develop a business. Oh, gosh, hands went up right away. Let's go.
Oh, the mic's coming to you right over here.
Okay, so the really exciting thing is that we're building exactly on top of this idea, okay? Because actually, my organization, Foncose, already did something like what you're talking about. We call it Zafen. It's your business, and it's a crowdsourcing place where Haitian diaspora can come and make investments to Haitian SMEs that we develop and put them on site so they can make that link. So we're going to build an equity fund that can keep rotating through that crowdsourcing thing. So we can make not just loans, because we feel that it's important that people have patient capital, not just loans that have to be repaid quickly. And so we need equity as much as we need debt. So we would make an equity fund that could be invested through your crowdsourcing web platform.
All right. Thank you. How about another financing idea?
So we have terrible graphics here. But we're going to call this the Women's MBA, the Women's Micro Buster Accelerator. So, you know, if we're going to start at the kind of the far end of the financing supply chain. So we all know, 2% of titled land owned by women in the world. So we do need an offshore, maybe onshore, but offshore, maybe sovereign guarantee fund that provides first loss or a guarantee to then onshore. Let's say it's India or Ghana, that provides a guarantee to a consortium of banks, and those banks agree to lend on the one hand based on a scorecard for gender-inclusive businesses that is kind of crowdsourced from local women's groups, from NGOs, internationally, a scorecard, and based on however many loans they make, capital they place, the government provides them fiscal incentives, kind of like with CRA in the United States. And the government agrees to do the following. There's going to be a network that is created of women entrepreneurs, experienced women entrepreneurs in the country, and that network will get either government funded or from other philanthropic sources, will get capacity building training that will then go to new women entrepreneurs who are vetted by those women in the network, okay? So the banks basically say, hey, look, I'll lend with a bit of a guarantee because there's no collateral. I'll lend, but I want the first due diligence and crowdsourcing, a kind of tire kicking done by local women entrepreneurs to new women. So you kind of create this whole virtuous cycle, and that's the Women's MBA, the Women's Micro Buster Accelerator.
All right.
Right.
Well, that tees us up nicely because now we wanted to move into some ideas that focused on skill development and networking for women entrepreneurs. All right. Wait till we get you a mic.
All right, so we had so many ideas. We've probably developed a small country plan over here, and it builds on everything that everyone said. Ours is the one-to-one coaching and funding via social media network. And our rule, our goal, very scratchy, kind of like, I'm not sure it really helps anything, but it helps me, because otherwise I won't remember. Via all social media, new women entrepreneurs are coached by one successful woman entrepreneur. However, that comes with a loan. So they apply for a loan, accessed via the one-to-one fund, which we think should be chaired by Hillary and Chelsea, because they're not busy enough, which loans at low percentage. And the messaging out to those new women entrepreneurs would be via widely distributed consumer goods. We'd need Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Unilever, Big Pharma. So the woman in the developing country sees the message on the consumer goods that she could apply. She applies for the loan at a low percentage. She gets the loan and gets set up with a female entrepreneur coach. And there's daily, weekly coaching via Skype, tweeting, texting. We also want Apple to throw in all the 4S, old 4S phones to do that with. And we want corporations to give a percentage to the fund and banks for low percentage loans, and the network of female entrepreneurs volunteer to coach and mentor who are also being funded by that institution in the developed country. And the end graphic is two women talking or Skyping saying, we are talking and being successful.
We're going to go over here, and then we'll wrap up with this table in the middle.
All right. Our idea is very similar to their idea, and that's maybe because two of us work for President Moreno. But anyway, and we've been hearing this for a couple of months now at the bank. But anyway, this is what we're thinking is a project called The Hub. And what we're dividing it is in three main areas. Basically, a social connector area, and this is basically, imagine it as a platform. And basically, you connect the women-owned businesses through the internet, through mobile devices, and you also get the association or grassroots organizations and NGOs. So that's one pillar. The second pillar is called the tools or access to market, and basically, you have to provide them information, export-import data, and more importantly, the right education. And basically, the third one is the bringing together the financial channels. And basically, this goes with the technical assistance that needs to be provided. So it's like an ecosystem. It should be virtual, so we're going to be putting some money in your clouding idea.
Yeah.
All right, our last group for today, right over here. Oh, and we'll finish up with you guys. Go ahead.
Oh, wait, 1 second. I think your mic's off. Let's make sure.
Try it again. Perfect. We thought outside of the prompts, so it's a little bit bigger than all of them. It's such a great idea, we've already raised $15.01. And if we had 7 more minutes, we could double it. But the whole concept is thinking about, if you remember the campaign in the US, it was called Look for the Union label, I think. But this is Look for the Woman's label. So really changing awareness of the consumer that they can invest in women-owned business. They just don't know who they are, and they don't know what they're offering. So we would start with an awareness campaign in the mature markets to really build everyone's awareness, just like buy locally, eat locally. It's the same kind of concept. And then the women that were successful because of the new money that was raised would be reinvesting in the program to create local networks of entrepreneurs, because we felt networks were very important, building on the other idea around networks. And they could help each other grow their businesses, which would then grow economies, which would then enable us to raise more awareness in more countries. So we call it the Women's Monthly Cycle. It's a hit. Okay. So we've started with $15 and 1 cent. Yeah. So join us, please.
I'm so sorry, we're running short on time. We're going to have one last group go over here.
I so don't want to follow that. That is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We want to create a reliability index, and I would love for you to look at this, but it's so sad, especially after that great one, that I'm not going to show it to you. What we want to do is create the equivalent of what we have in America that is called a FICO score when you go to apply for a loan. You know someone's reliability based on their past credit history. Have they repaid loans? Are they a bunch of metrics that we use to decide whether or not we can lend you money, and there's a good chance of us getting it back. Instead, we would monetize things that are not normally monetized in the West, like how many people do you take care of? How many kids do you have in school? Do you have a cell phone? Are you literate? Are you seeking literacy? Are you taking classes over your cell phone? All this would be web-based and cell phone-based, so you would have access to this at the community level. You wouldn't have to go to Barclays, no offense to Barclays, to find out what somebody's FICO score is. And we would have, what else have I forgotten? Cell phones? Oh, we would use a psychometric test that's already being used at Harvard called an entrepreneurial finance lab. Well, it was developed in the entrepreneurial finance lab, which would help us determine if you were psychologically oriented toward repaying a loan. And the fact that you are female. In America, you always pay more for insurance, for car insurance, if you were a male and you were under the age of, I believe, 25, because they knew that men under the age of 25 were much more dangerous. So just the fact that you were a female would also raise your FICO score or your reliability level.
All right, final round of applause.
Great work, guys. Great work.
So I just want to say a couple things. One is we really appreciate you going with us through this very fast-paced process. I also want to say there's a very interesting effect in innovation, which is that often you see really important big ideas arrive at the same time in multiple places. That's Kevin Kelly writes a lot about that in several of his books. So the fact that we had a couple of ideas that really touch on the same area, I think that's actually a very hopeful sign. And what's important is that these ideas are really just in seed form. And to actually make them have impact in the world, they need to become prototypes and experiments and pilots. And that's where you come in. So what I hope is that you've heard some ideas here today that you are personally interested in seeing forward. Maybe some of the teams that have formed at these tables are actually interested in further collaborating. So please, for one thing, please write someone's contact info down on the back of the sheet so that CGI can follow up with you if there are questions about your particular idea. Secondly, we really encourage you to exchange your contact information now if you think you want to keep discussing and collaborating around the idea at your table. And then if you are interested in really moving forward on one of these ideas, please check out the desk that's just outside, the design desk. There are a couple of the facilitators who are here today who are going to be at that desk, and they want to hear from you. If there's enough critical mass around some of these ideas, they'll find a way to support a continuing conversation around those ideas. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really had a pleasure facilitating this session.
Yeah, we were totally impressed. Thank you so much.